Welcome everybody. Welcome to this webinar about publishing apps for SharePoint 2013 on Windows Azure. I'm Paolo Pialorsi, and here you can find my email address and my company's website. Before moving to the real contents of the webinar, let me introduce myself very briefly. I'm a consultant, a project manager, and a trainer. I work in a company of my own, www.pialorsi.com, and I work all over the world. Just drop me an email in case of need, and I will be glad to give you some help and to support you in your own projects. I have more than 40 Microsoft certifications, including the Microsoft Certified Master on SharePoint, and I'm focused on SharePoint since its early years. I wrote some books for Microsoft Press about .NET, SOAP, Link, and of course about SharePoint as well. And my latest book is the SharePoint 2013 Developer Reference. Sometimes I'm also a speaker at the main IT conferences all over the world. But let's move to the contents of this webinar. We will start talking about the hosting models available for SharePoint apps and for deploying SharePoint apps. And then we will move to an interactive demo where we will see how to package an app in Visual Studio 2013, how to publish that app on Windows Azure Web Sites, and how you can register that app in the corporate app catalog provided by Office 365 in the SharePoint Online. So, first of all, we need to understand the available hosting models. Well, out of the box, you can create three kinds of SharePoint apps. The first one is called SharePoint Hosted App and leverages the SharePoint environment, and your app will be hosted in a SharePoint website, which will be a subweb of a parent website that will be extended through your custom SharePoint app. In a SharePoint hosted app, you can reuse web parts and controls available in the out-of-the-box SharePoint engine, and you can only write client-side code leveraging JavaScript in the client-side object model provided by SharePoint. We will not focus our attention on this kind of app because the publishing and the deployment of this kind of apps simply relies on the out-of-the-box infrastructure of SharePoint. On the other side, you have two other options, which are called cloud-based apps, and which can be provider-hosted app or auto-hosted app. Both these solutions for hosting your app allow you to execute the code of your apps outside of the SharePoint engine, and you can use the SharePoint client-side object model or the REST APIs using OAuth for authorization purposes in order to interact with the SharePoint environment. In an auto-hosted app, you leverage the Windows Azure and the Windows Azure SQL database under the cover of your app, and the second one just in case of need. While using the provider-hosted app, you can use whatever kind of web hosting provider you like, which can still be Windows Azure or can be any other web server that you like to use. And of course, it can be also any other kind of platform and not only an ASP.NET or a .NET-based platform. Well, keep in mind that the auto-hosted app model is still in preview. And as you can see from the Office Store policies, from the policy 10.2 released with the latest update on the 28th of February this year, if your app for SharePoint has auto-hosting capabilities, it will not be accepted in the Office Store until auto-hosted capabilities are enabled. Thus, I would suggest you to avoid using auto-hosted apps so far, and I would suggest you to wait for the public release of the auto-hosted app model before using this hosting model in your real solutions. So, the only cloud-based hosting model we have is the provider-hosted one, and this is the one on which we will focus our attention in this webinar. When you create a cloud-based app, you can still have an app web, which is a SharePoint sub-web of the parent web that you are extended with your custom SharePoint app, but it's an option you have. You are not obliged to. So if you want, you can still have an app web, for instance, for storing custom lists of items or custom libraries of documents or stuff like that. But it's just an option. Whenever you want to publish an app, you also have to make it available through the Office Store or the Corporate App Catalog. The Office Store allows you to sell or provide for free your apps to the entire world of people using SharePoint, SharePoint Online or SharePoint on premises as well. When you use the Corporate App Catalog, on the contrary, you publish your app only in an app catalog which is related to your own corporation. So you can have a Corporate App Catalog on premises, and you can also have a Corporate App Catalog while working on Office 365 and SharePoint Online. And in our webinar, we will focus our attention on publishing a provider-hosted app made using ASP.NET MVC, using a Corporate App Catalog in Office 365. So let's move to the interactive demo, and let's see how you can create, deploy, and publish your own SharePoint apps using this hosting model. So let's move to the demo environment, and first of all, let's start Visual Studio 2013 in order to create our sample SharePoint app. We'll start creating a new project, which will be of type App for SharePoint under the Office and SharePoint Apps group of project templates. We will provide a name to this app. Let's say it is SP14 sample app. And let's click on the OK button to create the new app project. We will have to provide the URL of the target SharePoint environment on which we want to test and deploy the app while developing it. In my case, it will be an Office 365 tenant that I have for creating custom apps. Moreover, you also have the capability to create a fresh new Office 365 developer subscription if you don't have one, and you simply need to click on this link in this wizard step, and you will be able to fill out some forms, provide some information, and create your own tenant just in case of need, of course. Then you have to make a choice about the hosting model you want to leverage in your custom app. The free available options are those that I have just illustrated, so the provider-hosted one, the auto-hosted, or the SharePoint-hosted. In our scenario, we will use the provider-hosted one. So click on the next button. Here, you can make a choice between using the old style and classic web form ASP.NET web application or creating a new MVC, ASP.NET MVC web application. And I will select this option right now. Then I will click on the next button in order to configure the authentication and authorization infrastructure that I will use in my app. Here I have two options. I have the option to use the Windows Azure Access Control Service, which allows us to manage authentication and authorization of apps when we work in Office 365, or we can also select to use a custom certificate and leveraging the so-called server-to-server infrastructure when configuring our app in an on-premises environment. So this second option is available only on premises. Because in this interactive demo we will target an Office 365 environment, I will select the Azure Access Control Service. By clicking on the Finish button, Visual Studio will create the outline of the project for me. But first of all, it will ask me to authenticate against my Office 365 tenant, so I will have to provide a set of credentials which will be used to provision the app onto the target platform as soon as I will play F5 to execute my app. So let's sign in and let's move on. As soon as the app will be ready, we will be able to play with it and to start the app just to see how it behaves in the web browser. And so far, this app will be just an ASP.NET MVC app that will only show a home page with a home controller related to that home page, and we will do nothing more than showing up a web page. But it's an app for me because I don't want to focus my attention on the app implementation. I want to focus my attention on the deployment and publishing stuff. So let me play F5 just to show you the app while working in the demo environment. I will click on the F5 button, and I will start installing the app on my SharePoint target environment. In a few seconds, the app will be available and ready to go in my web browser. So the deploy has succeeded, and now the web browser will be started. I will have to sign in into my target tenant using the same set of credentials I used before, or at least a valid set of credentials as well. And just after authenticating, I will have to trust the app because SharePoint requires the user installing an app to trust it in order to provide proper authorizations to the target app that will be executed. In this case, this app will simply require the basic authorization requirements, so we shouldn't take care of this right now. Just let me trust it and play with it. As soon as I will have clicked the trusted button, the app will be installed and will be executed inside my browser. Take a look at the URL, psdevsharepoint.com, and now, as you can see, the URL has been changed to localhost under HTTPS under port 44310. Well, now this URL is running in my machine using the IIS Express engine, and I'm the user who authenticated on the Office 365 environment, and I'm still recognized in the ASP.NET MVC app because under the cover the ACS engine already allowed me to transfer my identity from the Office 365 environment to the app, to the provider hosted app on my local machine. However, this app is running under localhost, and this app is running here just for testing and development purposes. But let's say that this app is ready to be published and make it available for end users. Well, my end users will not be able to browse to the localhost of my machine. So we will need to create a package to deploy it and to publish the app on the target environment. So let's start with this part of the story, which is the most interesting in our webinar. Let me close the browser in order to stop Visual Studio, and let me show you that we can publish this app targeting Windows Azure using a Windows Azure website that we will have to create on the Windows Azure Management Portal. So let me open my Windows Azure Management Portal, going to windowsazure.com. Let me access the portal, and let me sign in with my Microsoft account. I will have to provide my password. And here it is, the management portal for my Windows Azure environment. Well, here I have some services available, and under the websites group of services, I will create a new Windows Azure website. I can create it using the Quick Create option, just providing a URL and the region, or I can create a custom website using this wizard. I will provide a name, which will be ESPC14 sample app. I will deploy this site under the North Europe region, and I will not leverage any kind of database under the cover, but I could. If I would like to use a database, I can select a database, or I can create a database and then select it from this screen. I will click on the Complete button, and in a few seconds my website will be ready. As you can see, this hosting model for this website is free right now because I'm using the shared website model, which is free. By clicking on the app website that I've just created, here you can see in the Getting Started screen that I have the Download the Publish Profile link. By clicking on this link, I will be able to download the Publish Settings files that will be useful for me to publish my website on the target environment. Let me save this file in the proper folder, let's say here. And I will be ready to come back to my Visual Studio and to publish my website. Simply right-click on the website project. As you can see, when you create a provider-hosted app, you have the SharePoint app project and the website project, which will be the real website executing your web application. I will have to right-click on this one and click on the Publish option. Then I will have to authenticate against my Windows Azure environment in order to select the target website on which I want to publish my web app. And because I'm already authenticated using a corporate account against my Office 365 environment, I will have to sign out and provide another set of credentials, which will be those of my Microsoft account. And I will be ready to access my Windows Azure tenant as soon as I will have provided my proper credentials. And here I am. Now I can select to create a new profile, or I can import a published profile. That is the option I will select because I have already created the publishing profile file just a few seconds ago. Let me browse to my folder in order to get the ESPC14 sample app publishing profile. As you can see, I'm ready to publish my web app onto the target website that I've just created on Windows Azure, and the URL to access my website will be this one, http://espc14sampleapp.azurewebsite.net. By clicking on the next button, I will be able to define if I'm publishing the release version or the debug version of my website. The release one is okay right now, and when you will be ready to publish your final release of the app, you should select the release configuration option in order to compile all the code under the cover in release and not in debug mode. Click on Next, and we are ready. We can publish the app. However, we get an unexpected error as occurred message. That's because we have not yet configured our ASP.NET web application in order to properly interact with the Office 365 part of the architecture. So right now, the ASP.NET website is trying to look for all the information that usually SharePoint Online and Windows Azure ACS provide to a target SharePoint app, but right now those information are missing. So now we need to configure the SharePoint part of the story, and we will need to fix the configuration options of our Windows Azure website in order to make it possible to interact with the SharePoint Online using the authorization engine provided by Windows Azure ACS and OAuth. So let's go to the Office 365 environment and let's configure the app in SharePoint Online. I will close my browser and I will start it again. I will go to the tenant on Office 365 where I've just published my app, and I will access the app dev site target site. Let me log in using my corporate account. And let me go under a specific URL which is available in SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint Online, which is the appreg new.aspx page. through this page, you can register a custom app, a custom SharePoint app, in order to create a unique ID and a client secret, which will be used by the OAuth authorization engine to provide an access token to the app and to allow the app to access the SharePoint environment as well. So let me generate a unique ID, which is just a global unique identifier for my app, and let's generate a client secret as well. Then provide a title for the app, which can be ESPC14 sample app, and an app domain, which will be the URL that will represent the website which will publish our app. In our scenario, the URL will be ESPC14 sampleapp.azurewebsite.net. Let me underline that our website is available not only under HTTP, but also under HTTPS, as you can see. We will still have the error because we have not yet fixed the issue, but we can access the website using HTTPS, which is a requirement for OAuth in order to work in a secure way. So we will provide the domain name of our app just here, and we will be ready to configure and to create our app in the SharePoint environment. We also have a redirect URI, which is only useful when you want to leverage a particular kind of authorization technique, which allows us to request on the fly permissions from a SharePoint app onto the target SharePoint environment. We will not use this option right now. So let's click on the Create button. By clicking on the Create button, we will have a recap of what we have just created, including the client ID and the client secret of our app. We will have to copy this information somewhere else, let's say in the Notepad, in order to use this information while configuring our SharePoint app. So, we can now close this page, and we can go back to our app. So, let's close the browser. And let's go back to the SharePoint app. If we take a look at the web config file of our web application here, you can see that inside the app settings section of the configuration file, we have a client ID and the client secret options that we can configure with the proper client ID and client secret defined in the SharePoint side of the environment. Moreover, under the app manifest.xml file, if we open it as an XML file only, we have the remote web application and the client ID related to our remote application, as well as the start page URL, which represents the URL from which the app will be started when an end user will click on the app icon in the SharePoint environment. So, right now, we simply need to publish our provider-hosted SharePoint app in order to configure these options and to redeploy on Windows Azure the website using those information inside the web config file. So first of all, let's right-click on the SharePoint app project, and let's see that we have a publish option. But before publishing this app, we will double-click on the app manifest using the default editor in order to provide some information like the permission that we want to require to the target environment in order to properly run our application. Let's say we want to access the target site collection with a read permission, or let's say that we want to access the target website with a full control option, which are just for the sake of making an example. So we don't really need this kind of permissions in our app, because our app simply shows up a page. But just for making an example, let's say we want to configure this kind of permission. Take a look also at the General tab, where you can see the hosting type for our app is the provider hosted one, which is the one we selected when we created the app. Okay, so now right-click on the app and publish it. As you can see, Visual Studio 2013 provides us with a custom page with a set of steps that we should follow in order to properly publish our app. First of all, we have to deploy our web project. Then we have to package the app, and then we have to publish the app on the seller dashboard if you want to use the Office Store, or we have to publish the app in the corporate app catalog if you want to use a corporate-only app catalog. Well, first of all, let's deploy the web project. But in order to deploy the web project, we will have also to provide the information related to the client ID and client secret. Well, usually when you deploy a classic web application onto a target IIS web server, you simply need to double-click on the web config file and provide the configuration keys in the web config. However, when you have a Windows Azure website, you have to provide the configuration options using the management portal of Windows Azure. So I will close the web.config file and I will go back to the Windows Azure management portal. So let's open the browser, let's go to Windows Azure and let's access the portal. Let's provide my Microsoft account and my credentials. Now, one more time, in the websites group of services, I will have to select my Windows Azure website related to this demo, which is this one, and I will have to go in the Configure tab. Here you can see a bunch of configuration options, including some URLs, the App Settings section. So here I have to configure the client ID and the client secret that I want to use in the configuration of my website. First of all, provide the client ID, which is called this way, and the client secret, which is called this way. I will have to provide a value for these app settings, and those values will be the values provided by the app reg new page. Okay, so by saving these options, my Windows Azure website will be configured to properly communicate with the SharePoint part of the environment. This is one step. But we also have to publish the app. So let's close the web config and let's package the app in order to deploy the app package onto the SharePoint environment. Let's click on the Package the App button, and as you can see, a wizard will ask us which will be the URL on which will be available our custom SharePoint app. This URL will be the HTTPS ESPC14 sample app azurewebsite.net. And as you can see, if I don't provide an HTTPS URL, the wizard will warn me that this is not a suitable option. And by using Windows Azure Web Sites and by using the out-of-the-box available domain names, which are name of the website .azurewebsite.net, I already have an HTTPS valid certificate available. If you want to use a fancy domain name, you have to create your own custom SSL or X509 certificate, and you have to configure those certificates on the target Azure website. Moreover, I have to provide the client ID that SharePoint released to my app, which is this one. And now I'm ready to create a package to publish my app. As you can see, here I have a .app file, which I can publish on the Office Store if I want to publish my app on the public marketplace, or I can publish this app file on the corporate app catalog in my Office 365 tenant. That's what I'm doing. So let me open my SharePoint Online. First of all, I have to close my Windows Azure session. Let me go to my tenant, so portal.microsoftonline.com. I will have to provide my tenant account, sign in. I will have to go to the admin page of SharePoint Online. And here, in the Apps section, I will have the option to access the app catalog. Because so far my tenant doesn't have an app catalog, I have to create a new one by selecting the Create a New App Catalog site, or I can simply select the URL of an already existing app catalog. In my case, I will create a new one. I will have to provide a title, PSys Dev App Catalog. I will have to provide a URL, which can be app catalog as well. I will have to select the language. I rather prefer to use the English language instead of the Italian one. And I will provide a time frame for my site, as well as an administrator, which will be my own account. I can provide 1 GB of storage quota and 300 resources, which are okay right now. By clicking on the OK button, this wizard will create a site collection for me, which will be the App Catalog site collection. And in a few seconds, this site collection will be ready for publishing new apps, which will be available only for sites inside this tenant inside my corporation. Okay, so the App Catalog site is now ready. I can click on it and follow the address. As you can see in this site, I'm able to publish apps for SharePoint. So let's click on the apps for SharePoint. And I can upload a new app, which will be the app file that I've just created. Let me browse for that file, which is available in this folder. And let me publish it. As you can see, I have to provide a set of information describing the app, including the information of the description, which is ESPC14 sample app. A description, this is just a sample app for a webinar for ESPC14. An icon URL if I want to provide a custom icon, a category, which can be ESPC14 apps, a publisher name, which can be psys.com, which is my company, and then some images if I want, just to show how the app or the UI of the app behaves. A video URL if I want to provide a video as well. I can enable this app or not, and I can set it as a featured app, which will show the app at the very top of the list of available apps, and I will do that. I can save this information, and my app in version 1.0.0.0 will be ready to go. So if I go back to another site inside my tenant, I can simply install this app, which will be available in the marketplace, in the corporate marketplace, corporate app catalog. So let's go to the app dev site and let's click on the site contents link in order to add an app. But this app is already installed here, so let me remove it first. And let me add it again, no more from my Visual Studio environment, but using the corporate app catalog. So let's click on Add an App button. And if I click on the From Your Organization link, as you can see, here I have the ASPC14 sample app, which is available from psys.com. I can see the app details. And if I'm interested in this app, I can add it. As you can see, I have to trust the app, which will require to have full control on the site and read on the site collection, which are the permission I requested while configuring the app manifest. and if I trust it, the app will be installed. Now, SharePoint is adding the app to my parent site, and now the app is ready with the default icon and with this link which will drive my browser to the target website. So let's click on it. As you can see, it is working on it, and in a few seconds the URL will be the one provided by Windows Azure Web Sites, and under HTTPS I will have access to my target app, which is a provider hosted app, which now is able again to understand that I am the user who was accessing the Office 365 part of the story. But now I'm in my provider hosted app on the Windows Azure website. So let's say we want to do some little fixes. Let's say, for instance, we want to change the icon of the app and we want to upgrade the app. Go back to Visual Studio and let's do that. Let me close this tab and let me close this one as well. And let me change the icon that I will use for this app. By default, the app icon is this one. Now let's say I want to use another one. So let me right-click the app project and let me add an existing item, which will be an app icon which I have already prepared for my app. I will overwrite the already existing one, and I will be ready to publish a new version of my app, where in reality the new part of the story is just the icon, but let me double-click on the app manifest and let me change the version to version 2, or if you better like it, version 1.1. Let's save the app manifest and let's publish again the app. Package the app, targeting the same target URL under HTTPS and targeting the same client ID. Click on the Finish button, and as you can see now, I have another folder for the 1.1 version of the app. Let me go to the Corporate App Catalog and let me upload a new version of the file. So click on the Upload button and select the new version of the app. Because the app name is the same, the app ID is the same, SharePoint will recognize that this is just an update of the same app. So I will have to confirm all the information in the screen, and by clicking on the Save button, we will have a new version of the app. So let's go back to our SharePoint site, and let's see that under the Site Contents link in the About link, if we have some updates, and we have, as you can see, there is a new version of this app. Get it now. If I click on the Get It button, I will have to trust it again, and as soon as the update will be installed, the new app with the new icon will be ready for me. And as you can see, my app now has the logo of my company as the app icon, and by clicking on it, I will be still able to access the target website on Windows Azure Web Site. If you update something in the app part of the solution, so in the app project, you will have to redeploy the app package. If you update only the website which runs under the cover of your app, you will simply need to publish the web project again onto the target Windows Azure website, and you will be ready without having the need to update the app file as well. So, as you have seen, it's really simple to create, package, and deploy a SharePoint app with the provider-hosted model when you leverage Windows Azure Web Site as the target platform for hosting your app. So let's go back to our slide deck and do a quick recap of the steps we did. First of all, we created an Azure website on the Windows Azure Management Portal in order to leverage the SSL certificate provided out of the box by Windows Azure Web Site in case we use the out of the box available domain names. But you can also use fancy domain names if you want, but you will have to provide your own SSL certificates as well. Then we published the app using Visual Studio onto the target Windows Azure website using a publishing profile. And then we registered the app in the SharePoint environment using the app reg new page. Well, you can also use a bunch of PowerShell scripting if you are working on premises and if you are publishing your app on your on-premises environment. We configured the client ID and the client secret parameters in the app settings of the Azure website through the Configure tab in the Management portal of Windows Azure. And we created the app package file in order to publish our app on the corporate app catalog. And in fact, we uploaded the app package file onto the corporate app catalog. And lastly, we simply installed the app on the target website and we trusted it to make it available to our end users. So I want to thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you liked it and you enjoyed it. Feel free to write me an email with feedback, questions, or anything else. I would be glad to give you an answer if it is possible. And I'm looking forward to meet all of you in Barcelona next May for the European SharePoint Conference 2014.